No one in that city imagined that a simple street girl would be able to dismantle the entire history of a powerful family. But the truth is that destiny doesn't ask permission, it arrives when it wants, and sometimes in the form of a child who looks at a forbidden ring and says a phrase that no one should know. Most people believe the past is behind them. But what if I told you that some stories don't end when life ends? What if I told you that certain bonds cross worlds, ignore death, and return when something desperately needs fixing? Today you will learn the story of a reunion that didn't begin on Earth, but in the spirit world. A devastated grandmother, a lost girl, and a spirit who refused to rest while her family remained apart. And it all began because of a ring, an object so unique that it acts as a bridge between the living and the dead. In this video, you'll understand how signs, visions, apparitions, phrases spoken in a trance, and impossible coincidences can reveal truths buried for decades. And when you think you've seen it all, the story will turn upside down. So go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who believes in destiny, and comment below. Do you believe that spirits can try to repair what was left unfinished? Get ready. What you are about to hear is not just a story. It's a spiritual journey. It's a calling. It's a reunion of worlds. Aurora had always believed that some jewels carried stories, but Selena's ring carried much more than that. It was almost a reliquary of pain, love, and memories she could never let go of. That afternoon, as she walked distractedly through the busy streets, the golden gleam of the piece caught the attention of a street girl named Mira. There was a strange, almost supernatural moment when the girl froze, as if she had seen something impossible. And Aurora, without understanding, realized that that look was not ordinary. Mira didn't seem to be looking at an object, she seemed to be looking at a memory. Her face paled, her lips trembled, and her eyes welled with an emotion Aurora couldn't decipher. With slow, almost reverent steps, the girl approached and murmured, "That ring. Someone very important wore it." Her voice was soft, but laden with an inexplicable certainty. Aurora felt a shiver run down her spine. No one outside her family knew the true meaning of that jewel. The girl put her hand to her head, as if a sudden flash had crossed her mind. "I saw that ring, but I don't know where. Or do I?" She seemed to be talking to herself, lost among memories that shouldn't exist. Aurora observed each reaction, each quickened breath, realizing she was facing something that transcended mere chance. Mira didn't seem to be recalling an ordinary memory, she seemed to be accessing something deeper, perhaps from another life. And that, however absurd it might seem, didn't sound impossible at that moment. The wind changed direction abruptly, swirling only around the two of them, as if it had its own intelligence. Mira looked up, staring at the space behind Aurora with silent dread, like someone seeing someone who shouldn't be there. "She's here," she whispered, so softly that Aurora barely heard. The woman's heart raced, an old feeling of longing mixed with fear overwhelmed her, as if something, or someone, was about to cross the invisible veil between worlds. And before Aurora could ask who she was, Mira took a step back, her eyes still fixed on the invisible presence. "She wants you to listen, but not now." The sentence fell like a warning, a key opening a forbidden door. Aurora tried to insist, but the girl only shook her head, indicating that this encounter was just the beginning, and that the true revelation was yet to come. Aurora returned home with a restless mind. The encounter with Mira had left her with an impossible feeling of recognition, as if that unknown girl had touched something very intimate. But it was only upon arriving at her mansion, surrounded by old photos and dusty memories, that an idea began to bother her. What if that girl knew something about Selena? The thought was absurd, but too stubborn to ignore. The memory of Myra's gaze, so similar to her daughter's, wouldn't leave her head. In the following days, Aurora couldn't help but investigate. She discreetly sent employees to observe the area where she found the girl. Who is she? Where did she come from? Did she have family? The information she received was like a punch to the gut. Mira was an orphan. She had grown up on the streets. She lived off odd jobs, charity, and survival instincts. No documents. No records. No past. It was as if she had appeared out of nowhere, an existence adrift in the world, without roots. Aurora felt her soul ache. The granddaughter she had always dreamed of meeting could have spent her entire life before her eyes, suffering. But it only truly clicked when Aurora found an old folder with Selena's documents, including accounts from the day of her disappearance. There were details about the pregnancy interrupted by the tragedy, information that had never been shared with the media. As she reviewed everything, something clicked with frightening precision. The girl's age, her behavior, her spiritual sensitivity, everything converged on the same point. It was as if the universe was shouting a truth that Aurora didn't want to face. A truth that could change everything. Aurora felt the ground disappear beneath her feet when she finally allowed herself to think it aloud. What if Mira is Selena's daughter? The possibility was too painful. Because, if it were true, it meant that her granddaughter, the only heir to her lineage, the last link to her lost daughter, had lived forgotten, helpless, exposed to the dangers of the streets while she, Aurora, surrounded by luxury, failed to perceive the call of destiny. Guilt began to grow like an ancient shadow returning to claim what had remained unanswered. But before she could make any decision, something strange happened. The normally silent mansion seemed to tremble slightly. Windows vibrated, lights flickered, and a familiar scent, Selena's scent, filled the hallway. Aurora held her breath. It was as if her daughter were there, trying to confirm what she had just discovered. And although fear was present, the predominant feeling was different, that something grand was about to be revealed, and that the truth Aurora sought would not be delivered by logic, but by spirit. That night, Aurora couldn't sleep. The mansion seemed to breathe differently, as if each wall held a secret about to escape. No matter how hard she tried to rationalize it, Selena's perfume still lingered in the air, fresh, unmistakable, as if it had been sprayed seconds before. Aurora walked through the dark corridors with a strange feeling that she wasn't alone, not in a human sense, but in a spiritual one. It was as if something, or someone, was trying to guide her to a specific place. As she passed Selena's old room, the door, which was always locked, was ajar. Aurora felt her heart race. She pushed the door open slowly and found the room illuminated by a soft light, not from a lamp. It was an almost pearly, circular glow, like a small veil of energy hovering in the air. In the center of that light, a delicate shadow formed, so subtle that Aurora barely dared to blink. The silhouette seemed familiar, feminine, serene. It was as if Selena were there, trying to bridge the distance between their worlds. Aurora brought her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. Instead of fear, she felt a profound peace, as if embraced by a presence she had known since before her daughter's birth. The shadow approached gently, and the light reacted, pulsing like a heart. Then, Aurora heard something, not with her ears, but directly in her chest, like a voice echoing within her. "Don't be afraid. She needs you." Aurora fell to her knees, overcome with emotion. The message was clear. Selena was being the bridge. And the bridge pointed to Mira. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Mira woke up startled in her small, makeshift tent. She was panting as if she had run a kilometer. The ground around her was warm, even though it was a cold dawn. And in the air, the same perfume Aurora had smelled. A soft scent of jasmine, the scent Selena used to wear. Mira got up slowly, confused, but feeling a maternal presence, as if someone had been trying to protect her all along. A soft voice whispered in her thoughts, "Go back to her." There was no name, but Mira knew whose voice it was. Suddenly, the streetlights flashed 3 times in quick succession, the signal Selena used to give when she wanted her mother's attention as a child. Aurora, in her mansion, saw the porch lights do exactly the same thing. The same pattern. At the same instant. It was impossible to ignore. The call had been made. The two were being guided, from a distance, by the same loving presence. And as Aurora wiped away her tears and stood up, a certainty began to form. Selena wasn't just trying to communicate, she was orchestrating a reunion that had already been decided before they were even born. Selena's ring had always carried an energy that Aurora couldn't explain. It was an ancient piece, passed down through generations, with a central crystal that seemed to change color depending on the light, sometimes golden, sometimes bluish, sometimes completely colorless. But that night, after the spiritual apparitions, The ring began to pulse like a small heart. Aurora felt the metal warm on her finger, emitting a gentle vibration, as if something dormant had just awakened. It was as if that object was answering the call of Selena's spirit. As she watched the ring glow in hues she had never seen before, Aurora recalled a story her own mother used to tell. The ring was created as a symbol of protection for the women of the family, especially those who possessed spiritual gifts. It was described as a bridge between worlds, capable of reacting to presences from the other side. Aurora had always thought this was just a family legend, until now. The ring seemed alive. And I'm alive for a reason. It was as if the crystal recognized its lost granddaughter, even before Aurora herself admitted that possibility. On the other side of town, Mira also began to feel something strange. Her chest began to warm, as if an invisible flame had ignited within her. Suddenly, flashes appeared in her mind, fragments of memories that weren't entirely her own. She saw herself as a baby, enveloped in loving arms, while a woman with long hair smiled at her. On the woman's finger, the same ring, the same glow. It was as if the object were calling to Mira, activating forgotten memories deep within her soul, like pages of an old book being opened by the wind. Aurora, still trying to understand what was happening, gripped the ring tightly, and in that instant a wave of energy coursed through her body. Quick images flashed before her eyes. Young Selena, smiling, holding a newborn baby. The baby had deep eyes, identical to Myra's. Aurora put her hand to her heart, shocked. It wasn't her imagination. It wasn't a delusion. It was a message. The ring was showing what had happened, revealing pieces of the past that had been torn from her family. Selena's spirit was trying to stitch together what fate had ripped apart. The ring's vibration intensified, almost like a final call. Aurora realized it was pointing in a direction, a need, an inevitable reunion. Something, or someone, wanted her to go to Mira immediately. The ring was the key between the two worlds. And, deep down, Aurora knew that ignoring it would be going against the will of destiny itself. What she didn't imagine was that the next encounter between her and Mira would reveal something even more impossible, something that not even the ring could hide for long. Mira was walking through the busy streets when, suddenly, the city noise seemed to disappear. It was as if someone had turned down the volume of the entire world. The wind stood still, the air felt heavier, and a strange sensation of being watched overwhelmed her. Mira stopped, looked around, and saw no one, but she felt something. The same jasmine scent that had been following her since dawn enveloped the air, this time more intense, more present, almost like an invisible embrace. Her skin tingled from head to toe. She took 2 more steps and suddenly felt the temperature drop sharply behind her. Her heart raced, and Mira turned slowly, as if her body knew something her mind didn't yet understand. And then it happened. A translucent figure began to form in the air. First, a soft glow, like golden dust floating against the light. Then an outline. Long, wavy hair. A light dress that seemed to move with a wind only she could feel. And finally, the face, serene, loving, profoundly familiar. Selena. The mother she never knew she had, but whose soul she instantly recognized. Mira took a deep breath, but the air simply wouldn't enter. She was standing before someone who didn't belong to this world, and yet, that presence brought her such a strong sense of protection that she couldn't feel fear. Selena extended her hand, not to touch, but to bless. Her eyes conveyed a mixture of longing and urgency, as if she had finally found her daughter, but knew that the time for this manifestation was short. The light around the apparition began to pulse rhythmically, like a heart beating beyond life. At that same instant, Aurora, miles away, felt a pressure in her chest and held the ring, which began to glow with the same intensity as the light surrounding Selena. It was as if mother, daughter, and granddaughter were connected by an invisible thread, formed by love, pain, and destiny. Aurora whispered her daughter's name, sensing that something enormous was about to happen. A calling. A reunion. A spiritual revelation she had awaited for years, but never imagined witnessing in this way. Selena opened her mouth and tried to speak, but her voice came out only as a soft echo, not in human words, but in vibrations that touched the soul. Mira, with tears streaming down her face, understood nonetheless. The message wasn't conveyed with sounds, but with pure emotion. Something like, "You are no longer alone." And before Mira could ask anything, the apparition began to slowly fade, leaving behind only a silent promise and a mission that Mira didn't yet know she would have to fulfill. Mira stood still in the same spot where Selena's spirit had appeared, still feeling the gentle warmth left by the apparition. Her heart was racing, but it wasn't fear, it was something deeper, as if a door within her had been opened for the first time. The silence around her felt heavy, vibrating with a strange kind of energy. It was then that Mira began to feel a slight dizziness, as if she were being pulled inward. Her eyes slowly lifted, becoming glazed, distant, as if gazing into another plane of existence. Without realizing it, she began to murmur words that weren't her own. Her voice came out soft, yet firm, laden with a maturity that didn't match her age. It was as if another person were speaking through her. "The light always finds its way back," Mira said, in a tone so similar to Selena's that it would have made anyone who knew her shudder. And then, as if repeating something very old, something learned even before she was born, she continued, "Even when the eyes don't see, the heart recognizes." Words that Aurora used to say to Selena when she was just a child, words that no one outside the family knew. The trance deepened. Myra's body relaxed, but her face took on a serene, almost illuminated expression. She placed her hand on her chest, exactly where the spiritual warmth had accumulated, and added, "She is looking for you, and you need to find her before time closes the veil." The phrase echoed through the empty street, carrying an urgent warning. The voice was no longer Myra's. It was the voice of a mother trying to guide her daughter and herself at the same time. It was Selena, using her daughter as a bridge to deliver a message that needed to cross worlds. Meanwhile, Aurora, sitting in Selena's room, felt such a strong emotional impact that she almost fell backward. The ring shone with a sudden flash of light, projecting small reflections on the walls, as if trying to get attention. And along with the glow, the same phrase, the one she used to say to Selena in childhood, sprang to her mind with frightening clarity. It was as if a spiritual line connected the three hearts, Aurora, Selena, and Mira. The intensity was so great that Aurora clutched her chest, as if recognizing her own daughter's voice calling out to her. Suddenly, Mira awoke from her trance with a start, breathing deeply as if she had returned from a deep dive. She remembered nothing. She looked around, frightened, not understanding why she was crying or why her body was trembling. She only knew that she needed to find someone. Someone she had never seen, but felt she had known since before life began. Unbeknownst to her, she had just announced the beginning of a revelation that would change her destiny, and that of the family searching for her, forever. Mira was still recovering from the trance when she realized she was no longer alone. A few meters away, standing in the shade of a lamppost, was a tall man with a serene expression and eyes that seemed to see far beyond the material world. His posture was too calm for someone simply passing by on the street. He observed Mira with a mixture of curiosity and respect, like someone recognizing a rare spiritual phenomenon occurring. His name, she would later discover, was Elias, known among a few as the Traveler Between Worlds. The man approached slowly, as if each step had been carefully calculated so as not to frighten her. His voice was calm, soft, with a tone that seemed to pierce through her body and touch her soul directly. "You saw something that doesn't entirely belong to this side, didn't you?" he asked, without any judgment. Mira was surprised. How did he know? How could he feel that? Instead of answering, she simply nodded, still lost in the emotional world. Elias explained that he could perceive energy ruptures, strong spiritual events that left marks on the environment. He had felt an unusual calling that night, a kind of luminous wave that spread through the city and guided him there. "Someone is trying to cross the border, someone with deep ties to this world," he said as he looked at the space where Selena had appeared. Mira felt her stomach churn. It was impossible that he knew about that encounter, but the conviction in his voice left no doubt that he was telling the truth. Carefully, Elias touched the ground exactly where Selena's spirit had manifested. "There is love here, so much love. But also old pain, haste, urgency." Mira didn't understand, but something inside her reacted like a small flame igniting. Elias observed her for a few seconds and then said something that made her heart race. You are connected to this presence. It protects you. It calls to you. And you have a greater destiny than you imagine. Mira took a step back, frightened, not of Elias, but of the growing feeling that her life was about to change irreversibly. Before leaving, Elias handed her a small piece of paper with an address and just one handwritten sentence. When you feel like it, go. Then he walked away, disappearing down the streets as if he had dissolved into thin air. Mira stood there, holding the paper between her fingers, unable to explain why her hands trembled. She didn't know yet, but that address would lead her directly to the heart of the truth, and to the encounter that would seal the fate of 3 generations. And somewhere above her, the wind blew softly, as if Selena silently approved of this new step. The following morning, Aurora decided to leave the house to try and clear her mind. The restaurant she always frequented was her refuge, a quiet, luxurious place where no one dared bother her. But that morning, the atmosphere seemed different. As soon as she entered, the ceiling lights flickered 3 times in succession, in the same pattern she and Selena used when they wanted to call each other. Aurora froze for a moment. Could it be a coincidence? She tried to ignore it, but her heart knew Selena was there, trying to manifest herself somehow. She sat down at her usual table, but before she could order anything, the glass of water slid a few centimeters on its own, as if pushed by an invisible hand. Aurora wasn't afraid, she had a visceral recognition. Selena, is that you? She murmured softly. At that exact moment, a cold breeze swept through the restaurant, even though no doors were open. Napkins fluttered. Cutlery clinked without human touch. It was as if Selena's presence was trying to speak, but using the environment as its voice. Some people nearby looked around, confused, but Aurora knew exactly who was there. On the other side of town, Mira entered the restaurant guided by an inexplicable feeling, a gentle calling she had felt since waking up. She didn't know why, but her steps led her there. As she stepped inside, something strange happened. The main chandelier swayed slowly, as if reacting to her energy. And once again, the scent of jasmine filled the air, following her like a luminous shadow. Mira didn't understand anything, but she felt she was approaching the center of something enormous, something that would change her destiny forever. Meanwhile, at the mansion, even more intense phenomena were occurring. Selena's room, which Aurora had left locked when she departed, now had its door wide open, the curtains fluttering violently despite the locked windows. The antique mirror showed not the reflection of the room, but the silhouette of a woman holding a baby, as if it were a fragment of a living memory. Objects that belonged to Selena were arranged in a circle on the floor, forming a kind of symbol, an ancestral design used for spiritual protection. It was as if someone had arranged everything with their own hands. When Aurora returned, she found the house pulsating with an energy so strong it seemed to breathe. Her legs trembled, she gripped the ring tightly and realized, this wasn't a warning, it was a calling. The phenomena in the restaurant and the mansion were pointing to a single destination, a single point of convergence, the meeting between her and Mira. A meeting that the world of the living could no longer postpone, and that the spiritual world was doing everything to accelerate. Something enormous was about to happen, and Aurora needed to be ready to face whatever came. Aurora walked slowly through the mansion's corridors, feeling each spiritual manifestation like an emotional stab. It wasn't fear, it was guilt. An old, silent guilt that she had tried to bury for years, but which now emerged with full force. Every object moved, every scent that wafted through the air, every flickering light, everything seemed to repeat the same message. You left your daughter alone. The ring pulsed on her finger as if confirming this, reminding her of the nights when Selena cried for attention and Aurora, busy with social engagements, said she would deal with it later. The truth is, Aurora always blamed herself for not being the mother Selena deserved. And now, upon discovering that her missing daughter had left behind a child, a granddaughter who had grown up in neglect, her guilt reached a depth she had never experienced. I failed you, and I failed her too, she whispered to the emptiness of Selena's room. The walls seemed to respond with a slight tremor, as if the house itself absorbed her confession. Selena's presence became denser, closer, as if she were listening to every word. As the memories returned, Aurora recalled the days leading up to her daughter's disappearance, the fights, the long silences, the failed attempts at reconciliation. The last sentence Selena said before leaving home echoed in her mind like a ghost, "One day you'll understand." And now, faced with spiritual signs, Aurora finally understood. Selena wasn't trapped between worlds by chance. She had unfinished business, unhealed pain, bonds that needed to be restored. The responsibility of this reunion weighed on Aurora like an inevitable destiny. She sat in the armchair in the room, holding the ring with both hands, as if trying to ask for forgiveness through it. "I should have protected you. I should have believed you." Tears fell silently, and for the first time since the disappearance, she allowed herself to feel everything. Pain, regret, love, fear. The air grew colder, and Selena's soft silhouette appeared reflected in the mirror, not completely, just a luminous outline. Aurora felt a warm current in her chest, as if her daughter were embracing her from afar, saying without words that she was there, listening, understanding. But at the same time, Aurora noticed something terrible. Selena's spirit seemed tired. Her light flickered, as if she were losing strength. It was as if she had been trapped between worlds for too long. Aurora immediately wiped away her tears, overcome by sudden despair. If Selena was weakening, it meant that the reunion needed to happen soon, before the spiritual veil closed completely. And before she lost her last chance to repair everything she had destroyed. Aurora remained seated in Selena's room when she felt the temperature drop again, but this time more abruptly, almost painfully. The mirror in the room fogged up on its own, as if someone had just breathed on it. And slowly, words began to appear on the glass, written by an invisible hand, "I'm not finished yet." Aurora brought her hand to her mouth, her heart racing. It was the first time Selena had communicated so directly. The message was clear and devastating. Her daughter had not found peace, and the reason for this was greater than Aurora had imagined. The air grew thick, heavy, as if the environment itself were trying to tell a story. Suddenly, a sequence of images began to appear before Aurora, like overlapping flashes. Selena running desperately through a stormy night, a hooded figure, a crying baby, and then everything turning white, as if life had been ripped away beyond what human eyes could see. It was as if the spiritual world was showing her pieces of the mystery that Aurora had never been able to solve. Selena hadn't simply disappeared. She had been ripped from that world before she could finish what she had come to do. Aurora, trembling, understood something she had never accepted. Selena had died with a restless heart, carrying pain, secrets, and a responsibility she couldn't fulfill. And among these unfinished business matters, there was one greater than all others, Mira. Her daughter had left a life behind, a life Aurora never knew, never protected, never embraced. It was as if Selena's spirit were trapped between worlds precisely because there was still something, or someone, that needed to be rescued. And destiny demanded that Aurora be the bridge to that rescue. The ring glowed with a reddish hue, unlike any other time. It was a warning, a summons, a painful truth finally emerging. Aurora felt her whole body shudder when she heard Selena's voice, not with her ears, but directly within her soul. "Find her, and set me free." The phrase echoed so loudly that Aurora had to lean against the wall to avoid falling. She never imagined that her daughter's spiritual rest depended on her. She never imagined that her own redemption was also intertwined with this reunion. The mirror returned to normal, the spiritual light slowly faded, and the room was silent again. But the silence now had weight. It had urgency. Aurora knew, with absolute certainty, that time was running out, and if she didn't find Mira soon, Selena could be trapped forever between two worlds. It was more than a mother's mission. It was a fight for her daughter's soul. And without realizing it, Aurora took the first step toward the revelation that would forever change the destiny of the three. Aurora arrived at the address Elias had indicated, a small community center where street children and youth received support. She entered, her heart racing, guided by the ring that shone as if it had a life of its own. Each step seemed to pull her toward a destination she had been avoiding for years. When she finally spotted Mira in the distance, she felt the world stop. It was like looking at a younger version of Selena, the same deep gaze, the same strong fragility, the same aura that seemed to transcend the planes of existence. Aurora put her hand to her chest, choked with emotion. Mira also felt something inexplicable. Even before knowing who the woman was, a wave of heat enveloped her chest, the same heat she had felt when Selena's spirit appeared. She stood motionless, watching Aurora approach, as if time had slowed down just for that moment to exist. The ring shone brighter as the two closed the distance between them. It was as if the object were recognizing Mira, calling to her, silently celebrating the reunion that destiny had woven together through so much pain. When they came face to face, Aurora tried to speak, but couldn't. Her legs trembled, and tears fell before she could even control them. Mira, with an almost ancestral instinct, stepped forward and touched the ring, and the instant her fingers touched the metal, a wave of energy coursed through them both. It was as if the touch had reactivated dormant memories, past lives, ancient bonds. Aurora fell to her knees, and Mira followed, not fully understanding why, but feeling that this moment was written somewhere far beyond the physical world. And then it happened. The embrace. An embrace that wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. It was as if two broken souls finally met and recognized each other. Aurora cried like a mother reuniting with her daughter after decades. Mira cried like a heart that finally understood why it had always felt alone. In the air, the scent of jasmine intensified, enveloping them both like a cloak of light. And for a second, just a second, they both swore they saw a third figure embracing them from behind. Selena, smiling, finally able to touch them both at the same time. The impact was so profound that the entire atmosphere seemed to fall silent. The lights softened, the wind stopped, and even the street noises seemed more distant. Aurora felt something break inside her, not something bad, but rather an old prison, a guilt she had carried for too long. Mira felt an intense warmth in her chest, as if an emotional wound were being stitched up by invisible hands. The healing had begun. But that embrace, however powerful, was only the beginning. Because the truths that still needed to be revealed had enough force to change everything again. That night, after her reunion with Aurora, Mira was given a simple room inside the community center. But despite her exhaustion, she couldn't sleep. She felt something vibrating inside her chest, as if an invisible thread were pulling her soul to another place. The air around her seemed different, denser, and at the same time lighter, a paradoxical sensation as if she were between two worlds at once. Gradually, the atmosphere began to grow silent, too silent. And Mira knew, she was coming. Whirlwind that Selena's appearance had left behind. Elias smiled gently, as if he had expected this reaction. A soft glow began to emerge in the corner of the room, first small like a spark, then growing until it illuminated the entire space with a warm, pulsating golden light. Mira instinctively recoiled, but the warmth didn't burn. It was welcoming, maternal, protective. Gradually, the light began to take shape. First an undefined outline, then shoulders, arms, until the face emerged, delicate, serene, and absurdly familiar. It was Selena, clearer than in her first appearance. More present, more alive. Mira brought her hand to her mouth, unable to hold back the tears. Selena smiled, a smile that was both sad and loving, like someone who had waited many years to finally be seen. The sight was so intense that the room seemed to disappear around them, as if the world had been replaced by a space of pure light. The mother reached out, and although she didn't physically touch Myra's skin, the girl felt the touch nonetheless, soft, warm, unforgettable. It was a touch of recognition, as if the two souls remembered each other instantly, even without having lived together. Then, Selena's voice emerged, not through the air, but within Myra's mind, clear as an eternal whisper. You weren't born to be alone. I've always been with you. Mira began to cry, but not from fear, from relief, from understanding. She finally understood why she had always felt a presence beside her, even on the worst days on the streets. Selena continued, "Now you've found your way, but there are still truths that need to come to light." The light around them intensified, as if the mother were preparing to reveal something even deeper. But, just as in the previous apparition, the light began to flicker. Selena's figure trembled slightly, as if struggling to remain in that plane. Mira tried to hold the image with her gaze, as if she could prevent it from disappearing. Selena simply smiled, placing her hand over her own heart and then pointing at Mira, as if to say, "I am inside you." And in a final flash of light, the vision dissolved, leaving the room dark again, but also leaving Mira with the absolute certainty that her mother was guiding every step of that destiny. Aurora spent the entire night awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, her trembling hands still clutching the ring. The reunion with Mira had shaken everything she thought she knew about herself, her family, and even the spiritual world. It was as if a part of her, buried for decades, had been ripped from the darkness and abruptly exposed to the light. Myra's face, so similar to Selena's as a child, wouldn't leave her mind. The pain of guilt was still there, but now mixed with something new, hope. For the first time in years, Aurora felt a kind of inner warmth, as if an empty space within her was beginning to be filled again. It was as if she were recovering not only a granddaughter, but also a part of herself that had been lost along with Selena. The reunion also made Aurora confront her mistakes, but in a different way. Instead of wallowing in regret, she began to realize that there was still time to make amends. Not with Selena, perhaps, but with Mira. A new link between worlds, between lives, between souls. Spirituality, which had previously seemed distant and almost theoretical, was now an undeniable reality. Selena's manifestations, the phenomena in the mansion, Myra's words in a trance, all of this formed a clear path. Aurora could no longer deny that something greater was guiding this entire story. Destiny wasn't simply happening. It was being woven by invisible hands, with emotional and spiritual precision. And Aurora felt something she hadn't felt since the days when Selena was still a child, the living presence of her daughter beside her. But this emotional transformation also brought fear. What if she wasn't ready? What if she failed again? What if Selena was counting on her for something she wasn't capable of delivering? These questions pierced her mind like fine needles, always with the same weight, the spiritual responsibility she now carried. Aurora walked to the mirror and stared at herself with brutal honesty. She saw wrinkles of pain, but also strength she had forgotten she possessed. The strength to fight not only for herself, but for her daughter's soul and her granddaughter's life. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and did something she hadn't done in decades. She asked for forgiveness aloud. Not a murmured forgiveness, but a sincere cry born from the depths of her being. At that moment, a gentle breeze swept through the room, despite the closed windows. The ring glowed faintly. And Aurora, for the first time, felt that she was no longer alone in this process. Selena was there, guiding her not like a trapped spirit, but like a mother trying to liberate 3 generations at once. Aurora opened her eyes, steady. She was ready to discover what still needed to come to light. Aurora spent the entire day revisiting old documents, newspaper clippings, police reports, and Selena's personal notes. But something always seemed out of place in the story of her daughter's disappearance, a shadow that no one had been able to explain, a detail that didn't fit into any official narrative. Now, with all the recent events, that feeling returned stronger than ever. It was as if the truth was pulsing around her, about to emerge, and with each new memory that returned, Aurora felt a deep chill in her soul. When she closed one of the folders, a folded sheet of paper fell to the floor. Aurora had never seen that paper before. It was a letter written by Selena, apparently never sent. In it, Selena described secret meetings, a feeling of being followed, and a strange urgency to protect something, or someone. "If anything happens to me, look for my daughter." Aurora froze. Not only because she discovered that Selena knew she was in danger, but because the letter confirmed that Mira had been at the center of the story from the beginning. A secret hidden to protect her. As Aurora absorbed the revelation, the ring began to vibrate slightly, as if responding to the discovery. The vibration increased, and suddenly, a beam of red light radiated from the central crystal, pointing directly at one of the antique pieces of furniture in the room. Aurora rushed over and found a false bottom she had never noticed before. Inside it, a small wooden box, sealed with a symbol she recognized from her grandmother's spiritual tales. When she opened the box, she found a broken necklace and a photograph, Selena holding a newborn baby. The baby had Myra's eyes. The energy in the room shifted immediately. The temperature dropped, and the scent of jasmine filled the space. Aurora felt Selena's presence behind her, not threatening, but urgent, intense, almost desperate. It was as if her daughter were pushing Aurora forward, compelling her to move on, to uncover what had remained hidden for so long. Aurora held the photograph with trembling hands. Whatever had happened in the past was not a simple accident or disappearance. It was something bigger, darker, something involving forces beyond the physical world. She took a deep breath. She was ready to ask aloud what she had avoided for years. "What happened to you, my daughter?" But before she could utter the last word, the mirror in the room fogged up and a phrase appeared quickly, written in the same spiritual handwriting as before: "The truth is coming." Aurora felt her heart race. The feeling was clear. The secrets surrounding Selena's death were about to be revealed. And she needed to be prepared, because the truth had the power to heal or destroy everything that remained. Since reuniting with Mira, Aurora began to realize that nothing that had happened in the last few days was a coincidence. Every detail, the ring's glow, the vivid dreams, Selena's appearances, even Elias's mysterious presence, seemed like pieces of a larger puzzle. It was as if an invisible thread were stitching together lives, memories, and souls separated by time. For the first time, Aurora understood that destiny is not just a straight line. It's a tapestry woven by spiritual hands that see far beyond human eyes. Mira also felt this profound connection. From the luminous vision of her mother, she perceived signs everywhere. A white feather falling into her lap without any wind. A blue butterfly landing on her hand and staying there for long seconds. The lights flashing exactly when she thought of Aurora. It was as if the universe was talking to her, guiding her steps with delicate, yet impossible to ignore symbols. Each sign reinforced the feeling that she was exactly where she should be, even if the path had been hard and full of pain. Elias, for his part, observed everything from afar, like someone who already knew the outcome before it even happened. He explained to Mira that some bonds are too old to be broken by a single lifetime. "The three of you chose each other before you even took your first breath," he said. "What's happening now is simply the awakening of a spiritual pact." Mira felt a shiver run through her body from head to toe. The idea seemed too big, but at the same time profoundly familiar. As if a part of her had always known this. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, phenomena intensified. Old portraits began to fall just as Aurora remembered something important. Candles would extinguish themselves when dark thoughts arose, and relight when she found the courage. Selena's spirit seemed to guide everything with loving precision, as if leading mother and daughter to the same point, the truth. Aurora began to realize that she wasn't just investigating the past, she was being led to it. As if destiny were pulling her hand at every step. The feeling was clear, none of this was random. Their reunion didn't happen by chance, or by accident, or by luck. It was orchestrated, woven, prepared by forces that move between worlds and refuse to let a story of love and pain end incompletely. Destiny was approaching the final moment of stitching, and when the last thread was joined, something grand, and perhaps devastating, would be revealed. Aurora felt this as a profound premonition, capable of changing everything. When Aurora finally embraced Mira, it wasn't just the reunion between grandmother and granddaughter, it was the reunion of three souls whose destiny had connected them long before this life began. Their healing didn't come from easy answers, but from the courage to face old pains, the strength to forgive, and the invisible hand that guided every step of this path. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of this story: there are bonds that death cannot break, bonds that continue to whisper until they are heard. What's most striking is realizing that it all started with a seemingly small sign, a ring. A memory, a detail ignored for years. And that makes us think, how many signs do you ignore in your own life? How many encounters, coincidences, premonitions, and intuitions do you treat as chance, when perhaps they are exactly the opposite? Maybe destiny has been trying to speak to you for a long time. Now that you've followed this emotional and spiritual journey, I want to ask you, do you believe there are unfinished business between the living and the dead? Have you ever felt that a loved one, even after passing away, was still trying to tell you something? What spiritual sign have you received that you've never forgotten? Comment below. I'd love to hear about your experiences. Your story could help someone who needs to understand a sign they're not yet interpreting. And of course, if this story touched you, please like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share it with someone who believes in the invisible power that connects souls. And remember this final sentence, because it resonates in the hearts of those who have experienced something similar. Destiny never misses the mark, it just waits for you to be ready to see it.